language acquisition. This is going to be the first one, language acquisition, because it's general. It's a broad approach for the language learning theories. Okay, we're going to check first language acquisition. Okay, more people are joining. Thanks. Thanks a bunch. Well, I'm gonna present this, but you can participate at any time. Okay, you just let me know. If there is something you want to add, a contribution, a query, a question, or just a comment, please speak up. Yeah, don't worry. This is just an informal presentation, and it has to do with language development. It's focused on acquisition processes and how language emerged. Because I think it is fundamental for us to know the different theories there are in order to understand methodologies, approaches, and theories related to language learning and cognitive development. Well, let's start. You already know the differences between contexts such as EFL and ESL because we have discussed that previously with the characteristics of a child. You know, Pinter stated the differences. Cameron also, focused her work on English as a foreign language, which was, I think, suitable for our purposes and for the purposes of the course and for our setting itself. And there is plenty of research related to language development and teaching and learning processes for children. But most of this literature is focused on ESL, you know, for example, the United States or children from the UK, and now we have more Chinese studies and studies from Taiwan and from Japan, right? Thailand, and emerging different contexts where English is playing a different role. It's important to reflect on the context because that's the way we're going to approach the theories. Mexican context is very particular, and we have an EFL environment where input is going to play a vital role. And when I refer to input, I'm also trying to introduce Krashen's hypothesis of comprehensible input and how it plays a very important role in the classroom for teaching young learners, and not only for young learners, but for everyone who's in the path of learning English. You will see how these language acquisition theories and these scholars such as Piaget, Vygotsky, Brunner, Krashen follow up, to a certain extent, the different branches, the different lines of this network of language creation, language development. And as a result, the dynamics of a classroom are defined, by those perceptions, by those approaches, from the general to the particular and the other way around. Well, first, we're going to check these language acquisition theories. Okay, how does language learning happen, and how do children learn their native language? Language acquisition is an unconscious process most of the times, and a very good example of language acquisition is how you acquire your mother tongue, how you start developing sounds, imitating, and according to this behaviorist approach. It's an approach, you know, it's a whole theory, behaviorism. Children learn through operant conditioning. If you can remember, Piaget follows up this idea of you know, stages for cognitive development, and we also work on a chart, as far as I remember, that divides the different stages children go through. And indeed, you focus only on one. Yeah, can you remember? You focus on one stage that Piaget somehow label for chronological age or biological age, depending on the situation, you know, and different conditions. But this is interesting because you might see the connection between this theory, remember their theories, and Piaget's work, who was a biologist. You know, he was not even a psychologist, he was a biologist. And of course, you know, his work had a lot of impact on, you know, pedagogical implications emerge from his work, and that's very interesting. According to this theory, we human beings started producing language because of the sounds of nature, you know, and it's one of the most famous theories that we were used to listening to the sea, to the wind, you know, the sounds of, you know, dawn, so that we could communicate, you know, with the environment, and of course express our needs by means of the imitation of sounds, such as onomatopoeias and, you know, phonetics and phonological sounds. And of course, you know, language imitates. Another theory, which is the innatist one, proposes that children are born with an innate capacity for language. This is according to Chomsky's work. You know, I don't know if you are familiar with Chomsky, who's a remarkable linguist, you know, that has done a lot of research on, you know, interference and, you know, brain work, language related issues. Well, at the beginning of his work, he stated that we had this kind of language acquisition device in our brain. You know, that we are born with this individual capacity, ability, you know, physical ability for developing language. You know, kind of a machine there which is working at all times, and you know, that goes beyond the collective memory because we are born with this hardware. You know, it's a kind of a hardware here. This is another theory for, you know, the development of language. However, there are very interesting documentaries, you know, short films, which focus on the development of language in specific conditions and contexts where individuals have no contact with anybody, you know, and well, would be nice for you to watch it. I'm going to share the links, and you know how the individuals suffer, you know, a lot from mental illnesses, you know. Some of them can communicate in a very particular way, you know. Some others develop language, you know, by means of compensatory strategies. But it's something we need to explore, and we need to investigate, you know, in an attempt to create our very own perception of language. And it's going to have an impact on your teaching, and of course on children, you know, because it's a representation of your style, there in the classroom. And well, finally, we have another approach which is close related to Vygotsky and Brunner, who stated that social interaction was fundamental for language to take place, you know, for communication to happen. So language in this theory is learned through individuals' interaction. A child, and very often, you know, a relationship and rapport between child and a more knowledgeable person, such as the mother, you know, and how this connection actually enhances the development of language. I don't know if you have ever seen, you know, mothers and their children, and how a bond is constructed and is built by means of mimics, you know, movements, tone of voice, pitch, you know, mothers talking to the children, you know, in a different way, with different words, trying to imitate the child, and the other way around, you know, the mother saying, and you know, children trying to imitate what, you know, the mother does. So there is a connection there, you know. Of course, it's social interaction, it's a social bond, as far as we know, yeah, because emotions are a different, a touchy topic. Well, this is according to Perego and Boyle, 2013. Well, here you have the connection I was trying to shed light on, which is how certain methodologies for teaching languages and for teaching in a broad sense have certain relationships with the language acquisition theories. For example, for behaviorism and for this approach, you have an example of the audiolingual method, you know, where dialogue, drills, repetitions, you know, specific activities are carried out in a classroom where we have this approach, you know, specific contexts. One characteristic of this is that errors and mistakes are to be corrected immediately in order to avoid fossilization. So we could see how this perspective and this approach is still present, you know, in our context. It's still present in our context. And sorry, I lost my train of thought. And well, if we think of, you know, high school classrooms, you know, where we have for about 50 people there, 50 students, teenagers, you know, oh my God, teenagers, and you need to keep control of the situation, you usually follow some strategies, you know, to keep up with the rhythm of teenagers, or, you know, 10-year-olds, when you have 50 people classrooms, and you start using seating arrangements such as orderly rows, you know, and the connection between class, you know, students, children, or teenagers and the teacher is somehow impacted, you know, by the way you arrange the sitting, by the way you move around and monitor. So that is why most teachers decide to go for the grammar translation method, for the audiolingual method, repetitions, you know, drills, sounds, because there's no other way to cover everybody's needs and to keep up with the rhythm of a classroom who's full of people, energetic people, you know. So this is important to bear in mind, to consider, to reflect on, because it has actual impact, you know, on your teaching development and style. So there are some internal and external factors that impact the teaching to young learners. Okay, well, this was for your reflection, don't worry. Now, the next theory, okay, here you have the innatist perspective, and this is close related to Krashen's theory, which we are about to check for the following week. This is just an introduction. There are some advantages and disadvantages. One of the cons could be the contrastive analysis, that happens unconsciously when developing language, when acquiring language. Because according to this perspective, we acquire language, whether a first or the second language. And there might be, constraints such as interference. Interference between L1 and L2. Interference refers to the competition model that Pinter refers to. If you read Pinter, you have, by the way, you have the text in the folders there to Google Drive. Just look for Pinter 2010. There is this competition model where L1 and L2 are competing at the same time, in order to build up vocabulary, lexis, regulations, grammar rules, mechanics, and it's an unconscious struggle, Of course, there aren't explicit explanations of language regulations. But there is a struggle between, the dominance of L1 and L2, and the picture there might represent one of those interferences. When you have in your mind the word in Spanish, but you produce it in English, or when you have the word in Spanish, but you mix it up with English. I always come up with the example of mixing up words, if we think of people acquiring two languages, but that's, a phenomenon that might take place, and it's referred to as bilingualism. But sometimes, when we're working with toddlers, when we're working with baby young learners, we need to acknowledge and be informed for language related issues and phenomena. Well, the third one is the interactionist perspective. It's an approach that states that this is the way both native and non-native speakers of the language interact to make themselves understood. This is a negotiation, and it makes sense, because when you're learning, or when you're even speaking your mother tongue, you actually negotiate meaning. If you don't remember a word, you're helped by someone, in order to provide with meaning, to keep up with communication, and the other way around. You usually help others to address messages and to understand each other. So this is a dialogue, both intellectual and language dialogue. So this is another perspective, and it's got the foundations of the communicative approach, which was already studied by yourself, because you have already taken different courses through the BA. Now we have the sociocultural theory that was furthered by Brunner and, Vygotsky first and then Brunner. It's a variation of cognitive constructivism by Piaget, but that highlights the collaborative nature of learning, and also states that knowledge is actively constructed by the learner rather than, sorry for this spelling mistake, passively absorbed. And the student is not isolated at all. This is something that really makes sense, because we are working with human beings, and language, is evolving at all times, is developing while we are using it and while we are interacting. Okay, well, this is an activity just for you to do it at home. Okay, you're gonna check it. You have already read Cameron, but just go back and check what she states regarding first language acquisition, second language development, and foreign language learning. Identify your context. It's very straightforward. Now, okay, that was language acquisition theories. And now we're going to go over Piaget. Okay, it's quite connected. Okay, let me show you the presentation. Okay. Oh, wait a sec. Just need to move this. You're able to see the presentation? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we have already covered the characteristics of young learners. Remember, we concluded together, we reached agreement regarding the individuality of people and how we actually came up with the conclusion that every child is unique, that the context may impact, teaching and learning processes. And we're going to see how Pinter divides younger and, older learners in a sec, okay? Although we have general dimensions and characteristics of young learners, because every single child is unique, we do need to have a broad sense. Otherwise, it would be more difficult for our teaching. Okay, it's not that we label children, but we have a general idea, and I think this is important for your implementations, for your planning, for your everyday teaching. Well, this is a summary of, younger children and older children. Okay. This is something we have been discussing through your activities, in an online fashion, but to a certain extent, we have covered everything. You could see young learners, very young learners, the use of routines that you read regarding Brunner, how they call them little rituals. And there is another video, by the way, I'm gonna take note of that. I'm gonna share a video for little rituals, which is a very insightful one. The levels of awareness regarding a biological age, the different words between adults and children, literacy skills development, concentration span, well, basically that's a summary of our discussion. Now, let's keep on going. Well, now it's also important to get to know some of you are already teaching, okay? Some of you are already teaching. You need to put into practice what we have checked, what we have studied. If you are teaching very young learners, focus there. If you're going to teach, 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds or 9-year-olds, try to bear in mind both Pinter's and Cameron's theories, okay? Wow. We're gonna check a couple of contexts, okay? And a couple of statements and questions for us to reflect. You have already read this, okay? According to Cameron, by the age of 5, first language acquisition is largely complete, okay? Reflect on that. Say whether it's true or false, okay? Now, some structures in spoken language are acquired late because of their connection with the written language, okay? So these course abilities are somehow in a cycle, okay? And well, this is something we have already revised, okay? It's a process, you know, it's a process that we need to be aware of in order to follow up. Another question for you, for your reflection, after reading, after designing your activities, your warm-up, and checking out the different theories, and to divide Piaget, Vygotsky, Brunner. Do children learn a second language better than adults? Yes or no? What do you think? Okay, take a minute, think of that, and say, well, what is to learn better? What is communicative competence? What is meta-linguistic skill? You know, what is fluency? What is accuracy? To what extent can a child be competent at least at literacy skills? To what extent are adults able to develop accent skills, for example, or, you know, have this facility for developing sounds, for repeating, reproducing? And well, the question is, you know, ambiguous, you know, because you could say what is good, what is wrong, what is, you know, better, what is worse. But it enhances reflection, okay? It enhances reflection on your teaching, on your perspectives of, you know, teaching and learning for young learners. Another question for you. What is the critical period hypothesis? This is, you know, quite controversial, okay, but it's still in the literature. It's still there, okay? It's a current hypothesis. To what extent, you know, we are limited by age, you know, muscles, you know, your mouth, your throat, your stomach, okay, your lips, your teeth, in order to be able to reproduce sounds accurately and fluently, you know. What the critical period hypothesis states is that children have this ability, you know, until the age of, you know, specific number. But this has also been discussed, you know, so it's gonna be your task to investigate more than Cameron's ideas for the critical period hypothesis, and to take it into account for your teaching, but to expand your perspective regarding this hypothesis, okay? It's important because your activities are going to be influenced by your thoughts. You have the references there, okay? Kim, Leibo, and Espada. And it's also there in Cameron. You have already read that, I'm sure. The competition model I was trying to refer to. The competition model, well, it's the struggle, you know, regarding L1 and L2. You have already read. Different languages have different ways of carrying meaning, and the particular way in which a language encodes meaning acts as cues to interpreting the meaning of what is said. I was thinking of a close friend of mine who is bilingual, by the way. She was in Mexico, but she was born in the United States. And I remember she was learning, you know, Spanish here in Mexico, with their grandparents. And she started speaking in English, and suddenly she started mixing up words. I can remember she used the word Muna to refer to the moon, So she was using both English and Spanish at the same time. Eventually, of course, she became aware of what she was doing, but this is a process, and you need to deal with the process, of separation, discrimination, linguistic skills, meta-linguistic skills. And it's also about, um, stages of development in this case. So if you're aware of that, your activities in the classroom are going to be enhancing, this awareness of language. And what you want to do in the end is children to learn language. That's what you want to do in a suitable way, in an effective manner. You want them to be good at the language. You want them to be eventually proficient at the language, and that's a whole process. Well, with Cameron and Pinter, we also took a look at the differences between a perspective and teaching. What was the difference? Well, it's not the same, to center your learning, to center your teaching on learners than to have a perspective on learning center on students. This is very straightforward, very easy. And, Pinter and Cameron both summarize it in a couple of words, and they say, be careful, okay? Center your teaching on learners is good, it's healthy, but be careful to never forget, that you're focusing on language and you want them to learn language. This is something related to language as language, okay? Take advantage of the opportunities you got in order to teach language, okay? Otherwise, are going to be leading what they want to do, what they want to learn, and you are the one who plans, you are the one who states goals, who actually provides with objectives, language learning objectives. So that's the difference they are referring to. So we need to be careful, okay? Yeah, a learning center approach is wonderful. I think it's to a certain extent related to what we are suffering at the moment, with online education. We are centering our teaching on learners, and we have previously done that, of course, but we need to be careful, okay? Because we need to keep a perspective on language. Now, what is different about teaching a foreign language to children in contrast to teaching adults? Well, we have lots of differences, right? To begin with, personality differences, personality types, learning styles, characteristics of children again. So lack of innovation, which has to do with the critical period hypothesis, and a native-like accent. And now, Piaget, are you doing well? Yeah, I hope so. Well, now Piaget, this crucial scholar for education and with pedagogical implications. Well, according to Piaget, the theory of active learning, also known as constructivism, has to do with the children's construction of knowledge by himself. The child's construction of knowledge by himself or herself by making sense of their environment in an active way. your mind maps, your work, your evidence. I could see you use this quote. It is through taking action that learning occurs. Excellent. Very well. I was happily surprised to check some of your work already, and I think it's really valuable, relevant. We're gonna check the concepts of of Piaget. How did Piaget call this process of discovery and facing new knowledge, new situations, conditions related to the environment and the atmosphere around, assimilation, right? And the other side of learning was called accommodation. You gave a couple of examples there. Your mind maps, your representations were remarkable and I really appreciate it. I checked most of them. I think I checked all of them. Yeah, I did. Yes, I did. And of course, I commented where necessary, and I think this was already cool. Well, here you have the other elements and concepts that you explain in your work, such as equilibration, a new situation, and disequilibrium when new information comes up, but in the end, the result, according to active learning and Piaget, might be the assimilation and the accommodation of knowledge. Okay. This is a chart, a representation of the child according to Piaget, problems from the environment, from the world, the child takes action, learning, and results of learning. Okay, an interaction between the world around the child, the environment, and the problems they might be facing. A couple of keywords for active learning: well, exploration, play, talking things to others, and adults who do not play a paramount role in this theory, but they are there as well as part of the environment, as part of their realities, doing and talking. This is very interesting, the inner dialogue of children, and we also carry out this activity at all times, while I'm checking homework, I'm with this inner dialogue inside my mind. I'm sure you too, or maybe not. Exploration. Okay, well, you gave an example already. This is just an example, a child playing for representing this theory. And the stages of development. Okay, stages of development. Sensory motor stage, pre-operational stage, concrete operational stage, and formal operational stage. It's just similar to a taxonomy that goes from the lower to the higher. Okay, formal operational stages, and you chose one. I could see you chose one, and that might well, I guess it has to do with the stage you are more familiar with, or you wish to work on later on, because some of you are pre-service teachers. Well, maybe you want to focus on a stage, and that's why you decided to focus on that. Here you have the chronological age, from birth to 2 years old, from 2 to 7, from 7 to 11, from 11 and on. And well, this has already been covered by means of your first task. Okay, this is another description, experiencing the world, representing things, thinking logically, and thinking about hypothetical situations, symbols, and abstract thoughts. There are implications, of course, pedagogical implications and criticism for certain certain issues related to the stages, because of the differences among children and because of the context. They are quite general, but as I said at the beginning, it wouldn't help at all, to avoid having this general perspective of children. We need to know what others have done. It's just like coming back to history to situate ourselves in what is happening at the moment. You could surf the net or investigate, and find out information that is related to the theory and come up with your own conclusions. But you need to bear in mind that this was a a change of paradigm regarding education, and it's still current, it's still present, so Piaget definitely impacted the way we see the individual's cognitive development. More implications for you to take into consideration, well, the differences between contexts, between a people, a child, and adults. Working out with the specific stages, to have guidelines for your activities, and they have a lot, especially when you are a beginner regarding teaching. Lessons must be planned by keeping in view the individual cognition level of the students. Okay, more than characteristics which are included, learning styles, etc. You also take into consideration these stages and social construction of the capacities data. Well, those are the references. Pinter is also included there in the folders, 2006, and Cameron. Okay, we've got we have been working for an hour. I don't know if you have any questions or comments about maybe comments about your tasks, about the stages you decided to work on, or your mind maps, your representations of active learning. Does anybody have a comment, a contribution, or a question that we could discuss and share together? Not really. Well, I guess it's crystal clear for you, right? Well, I want to think that. Well, I wanted to present this because for next Wednesday, I'm gonna be presenting social constructivism. Yeah, and then I'm gonna be presenting Krashen's theory, which is something you're going to work on this week. It's gonna be week number 5. You will have to read Krashen's hypothesis, carry out language learning and language acquisition activity, and participate in a forum which is related to comprehensible input. I'm gonna send you an email today in the evening explaining what you need to do in detail and providing with the guidelines and due dates for delivery. Okay, it's you're gonna be working both by Google Drive folders and also Eminus. I think you're gonna be working on Eminus only this week. Yeah, this Krashen's activity is uploaded to Eminus, and the forum is there as well. So this week is gonna be focused on Eminus. I will check your work today. It's related to social constructivism. And tomorrow, I'm going to be checking your comparative tables on Piaget, Vygotsky, and Brunner, as well as the forums, Vygotsky's and Brunner's, which is a forum on scaffolding. So if you don't have any more questions or comments, I think we could stop here and just wait for my email.
Teacher?
Yes, student. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank God. I'm not alone. Thank you.
Are we having classes on Monday? Not
Well,
right?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. No, we
Okay.
have a session on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, Wednesday. But of course, I will let you know in advance. Yeah, with time.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, Diana.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a couple of, you know, communication constraints, right? Because
Yeah.
last week we were connected on Monday and Wednesday, but this is what happened, you know. I actually designed the online meetings for them to play it automatically. So they go automatically on Monday and Wednesday because I'm very stupid at technology, but you know,
No.
it's more, well, besides that, because I decided to do it that way, you know, myself, because I said, okay, what about doing automatically and I don't need to, you know, design the session again and again. And I said, well, maybe we can work every single Monday and every single Wednesday. But, you know, the bunch of work I need to get through is just overwhelming. So I
Yes, I
need,
know.
you know, I need time for checking. I need time for um, keeping track of your progress, and online learning is changing at all times, so we need to make decisions at the moment of teaching. It is, of course, it is open for you to join because I'm at the computer all the time, honestly, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, at night. I'm in front of the screen and I can see whenever you joined a meeting. Yeah, and if I see you are there, of course I join and I say, what's going on? But wait for my emails so that,
Okay.
you know, you could program as well, you know, schedule your meetings because you also have plenty of things to do. I'm sure you have plenty of homework and different courses and chores at home, and you know, your research, your social work, etc. So you are really busy as well. That's why I try to send you an email with the instructions and, you know, letting you know when we are meeting for you to schedule and, you know, and organize your time. But thank you. Yeah, and I'm sorry for you know, for that misunderstanding.
No, teacher, don't worry. I think most of us get confused because of the schedule. As you said, it was automatically. But okay, we'll wait for your email.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah. Thank you for your understanding. And my apologies to you. Anybody else? Does anybody else have a comment, a question? No? Really? Okay. Well, it was good to be here. We keep in touch. Gonna send you an email today, and please do not forget about the due times today and tomorrow, okay? Because I'm gonna be checking your work. I'll send you an email with the instructions for week 5, and that's gonna be it, okay?
Okay, teacher.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, teacher.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna stop recording this.